I am Phil from Breaking Cycles CIC. Breaking Cycles works with bikes and well-being. Our idea is that riding your bike is the answer, whatever the problem is. And part of that is challenging limiting beliefs. This weekend I'm going to be challenging a limiting belief by proving that fat lads can indeed climb. I will be doing an Everesting on the Bashall climb, which involves riding up this hill 130 times. So I'd better get cracking. Before I delve into the details of what cycling means to me and how my relationship with cycling has helped me deal with issues around neurodiversity, I'm going to start by explaining what Everesting is, where it comes from, and what it means to me. The concept of Everesting began in 1994 when George Mallory Jr., the grandson of the George Mallory who climbed Everest, decided that he was going to ride his bike up a local mountain enough times to equal the height of the mountain his granddad climbed. So he set off and he rode 8 climbs of Mount Everest, and from that point the concept took off, and now there's an Everesting Hall of Fame. There's records, different types of Everesting. You can ride it, you can run it. There are double Everestings, triple Everestings, off-road Everestings. There are badges for steep Everesting or using a significant climb. And this leads to there being a community of people who have done Everestings that tend to celebrate each other's achievements rather than compare them, which is something that really appeals, because the mountain I've got to climb isn't the same as the mountain that the next person has to climb. This makes Everesting a perfect analogy for overcoming any kind of difficulty around sort of neurodiversity or even something physical. So I've previously mentioned there was, you can now do an off-road Everesting, and there's a badge within the Hall of Fame for that. So that there wasn't always. And when I first heard about Everesting a few years back, I decided, being quite interested in endurance mountain biking, that I wanted to do a mountain bike Everesting. It's hard enough on tarmac, so going to do it off-road is just incredibly difficult. I've failed at it twice. Once because I didn't have the right spare parts for my bike, and I snapped a new chain a few hours in to the first attempt and I had to come home. The second time I ran out of time. I couldn't physically finish it in the time that I'd planned to do it because I'd slowed down so much. Both of these are examples of just underestimating just quite how difficult it would have been to do this on road. So I managed my expectations and I picked the Bashall climb, playing to my strengths, knowing that I can ride for a long time and I can cover very big distances. So keeping the climb to a gradient of under 7% means that my weight is less of a disadvantage to me than it would have been if I'd done something steeper. So that's easy enough, so I just do that 130 times. We know that cycling has a positive effect on our mental well-being. This can be because of the physiological factors, or it could be because of the way that we become involved in communities and the social events around whatever our sport is. So it's 10:30ish on Saturday morning. I obviously got changed and ditched the basket, so it's time to crack on. Cycling, particularly cycling alone, can be quite a mindful activity. It's the sort of thing that gives us time to think and to process things at the pace that our own minds want to, rather than a time scale that's been set by somebody else. Going out for a ride is a really constructive way for me to spend time on my own and just think and work things out. So I structure it into my day as much as I can. A great example of this is commuting to work. So it's taking an activity which could potentially be quite stressful in driving, negotiating traffic, parking, and replacing it with something that's actually relaxing and provides you with some of the much needed thinking time that can be difficult to justify to yourself or other people around you during your normal working day. When I take on a challenge or enter an event, there's usually an element of wanting to self-actualize and just create something positive that I can focus on. But there's also an element in there of it being a way that I can create that time for myself. One of the presuppositions of neuro-linguistic programming is that mind and body are one system. The mind works with the brain, and I think this is a really great example of just that. There's something about physically challenging yourself that allows you to find answers. This is all supported by a lot of physiological facts, like if we spend more time outside when the sun's shining, we will absorb more vitamin D, which contributes to us having better well-being. If we exercise more frequently, it has positive impacts on our mood because of things like endorphins. So there is all that straightforward physiological stuff where exercise supports good mental well-being. As well as that, you get involved in clubs and activities and meet people at events. The reason that this video is a collection of photos and bits of footage with me doing a voiceover afterwards, rather than the planned format of creating sections of video whilst I was riding, is that I only actually did 5 repetitions on my own during my Everesting attempt, despite the fact that I was on the bike for over 35 hours. I even had company to ride with right through the night, which was brilliant, particularly because it rained, and there was a point where all I wanted to do was just sit in the car and wait for the sun to come up and the weather to get a bit nicer. But I carried on because I had someone there encouraging me. You know, when you take on an endurance challenge, that there are going to be parts of it where it just feels incredibly tough and maybe almost impossible, and that you just need to keep going and break it down into little chunks and use whatever strategy you've got. Having people around you to encourage and support and share it with you, even if they don't really have a full understanding of what you're going through, has a massive positive impact on your chances of achieving whatever it is you're aiming to achieve.
The bikes are coming back. Okay, so we're going back up now. Come on, hang on in there. How many laps now? 3. Oh, yeah. What about you, Phil? Come on.
60.
Woo, there we go. Say go on, bye, Daddy. Say bye, Daddy, bye.
Being involved in an activity like cycling leads to you being part of a real community, and the cycling community here in the Ribble Valley is really, really strong. So the people who came out to support me were a collection of my club mates from Clitheroe Bike Club and people that I know through the North Lancs Road Club time trials, and friends made whilst working at the Green Jersey Bike Shop. This is quite a significant, very visible example of it, but without knowing so at the time, a lot of these people were there for me during the time that I was off work, struggling with depression at that time. Cycling was pretty much the only thing that I was able to do that made me feel worthwhile and like I was actually doing something that was going in the right direction. And I always had someone to share that with. That was and still is a massive part of my recovery and coping mechanism. Having that lived experience of cycling helping me through some tough times inspired me to create Breaking Cycles. And what we want to do is make sure that cycling is as accessible as it can be for everybody, so that more people can benefit from everything that there is on offer, and all of the ways that including a bike into your lifestyle can improve it. With Breaking Cycles, I'd like to encourage people to get out there and have a go at a club ride or an event, or just going out with that friend who you perceive as being fitter and faster than you are. It's really important that we don't let our limiting beliefs hold us back.
So I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about limiting beliefs. A limiting belief is anything that prevents us from doing something, any thoughts that we have that prevents us from doing things. So for me, An example of this was thinking that even though I go out riding my mountain bike regularly, I'm not skinny, I don't ride all day, so I won't be able to keep up with a cycling club. And of course, by the time I actually get around to doing it and turn up, I find out that I'm not only fine, but I'm actually quicker and have more stamina than some people. And actually everyone's just like me. Just a bloke who wants to ride his bike, who hasn't quite finished with playing out even. Or both, in a lot of cases. This section of the video is about dyspraxia and mountain biking. I'm going to explain what exactly dyspraxia is, how it affects my ability to ride, and how mountain biking has a positive effect on the symptoms of my dyspraxia and actually helps me cope better with it.
I'm going to read out the definition from the NHS website for dyspraxia. So it says, developmental coordination disorder, also known as dyspraxia, is a condition affecting physical coordination. It causes a child to perform less well than expected in daily activities for their age and appear to move clumsily. This, of course, is true. However, it doesn't fully describe dyspraxia. As well as affecting physical coordination, dyspraxia affects the way that we process sensory stimulus, and because of that it affects all kinds of organisation, whether that's the way you physically organise your movements, which is how it affects you, both your fine and gross motor skills. But these things also affect time management, planning and organisation. It can affect memory, particularly short-term memory, your perception of things, and the way you process information. This can often be evident in articulation and speech. So for me, you might have noticed through this video, you'll definitely notice if you have a conversation with me that I have a tendency to pause in the middle of sentences. This is generally whilst I'm kind of translating my thoughts into words. Because this difference doesn't affect cognition, it's not a deficit, it's just a different way of being. That can lead to it having quite a lot of social and emotional difficulties. It can be quite a frustrating condition to have at times. I'm a fairly experienced mountain biker. I've been riding for a good few years. I've competed in quite a few events, particularly favouring longer distance stuff. I'm not a technically fantastic rider, but I do have a reasonable level of technical skill, and of course that comes into all of mountain biking. The feature we're looking at here, a log ride, is relatively common trail feature that you see at a lot of trail centres, and it's something that a neurotypical version of me, so someone without dyspraxia who has a similar sort of level of experience, would find this quite an easy thing to do. So I'm going to explain to you what's happening and why I keep falling off and why it's so difficult. So as I ride along the log, I'm looking at the trail ahead of me and I'm judging where my wheels need to go, as I would with any other piece of trail. And it really is that simple. That's all you need to know, is understand how the bike moves, keep it rolling and steer it over that particular object. Because it's raised from the ground and the ground underneath is often unstable or moving, this causes, as I process it, this causes a little bit of disorientation and brings on a vertiginous sensation. So I feel like I'm rolling forward, which gives me the urge to stare down at the ground in front of my wheel rather than up ahead at where I should be looking. And as this happens, it's like all the information's flooding at my brain faster than it can cope, and it causes, well, something similar to when your computer crashes, when there's just too much information to process all at once. So you just do nothing or do something unpredictable, and of course at that point the coordination runs out, and that's when you fall off, and that's what's going on here. So when I come to learn how to do something physical, it generally takes me longer than it should do, or longer than it would somebody who's neurotypical. I think that's what drew me towards the endurance end of mountain biking, because it's more about keeping going and getting back on, rather than about being particularly fast on one trail like downhill or enduro would be. This brings me back round to limiting beliefs, because somebody with dyspraxia can learn to ride a bike, can go mountain biking, and a fat bloke can join a cycling club and can do hilly rides. It's just about managing our mindsets. And that's a massive part of what I want to achieve with breaking cycles.
So I learned about the term limiting beliefs through becoming an NLP practitioner, but it's actually something I'd come across before. In my first year of teaching as an NQT, working in a generic special school, I came across a young lad who used a sitting ski, and he had cerebral palsy. And on finding out that I'd been learning to snowboard, he came to me with the question, how does someone in a wheelchair have a go at snowboarding? That looks cooler than skiing. And I just thought, yeah, this lad's brilliant. He's not let his condition limited him. He's just gone, oh, okay, that's a different challenge. How does that work then? And that's exactly how we approach it, how we should approach life. Rather than thinking, I can't do that because of this, just think, well, that's a different challenge. How do you do that? So, right now, well, I can ride 300 miles. I've ridden further before. Not great at hills. So, choosing to do an Everesting on a hill that isn't actually that steep works for me and my mindset and my physiology. So that's what we're doing. And it's really easy.
It'd be really easy for me to make a video about my cycling achievements and say, hey, look at me, I'm great. You know, I've come from getting into the sport to taking part in organised long distance rides to doing 24-hour mountain bike races and 24-hour time trials, sort of culminating in qualifying for the national best all-round competition. And in 2018 I was 9th in the 24-hour fellowship best all-round. All of those things actually came to me a lot easier than a whole host of other things that I've done in my life, and this is consistent with what I experienced as a teacher in a pupil referral unit. We need to celebrate learning and change rather than success and achievement, because success and achievement is its own reward. And you don't have to do something as big as an Everesting to completely change your life for the better.
So that's 19 laps completed, 4,640 feet. So that's a Nevising completed. So that's higher than Ben Nevis, and I've still got plenty of company.
It's not actually that big a deal. It's just riding your bike up and down a hill a lot and being stubborn enough to not give up when it gets hard.
Nicely done, Phil.
So we're on 29,085 feet.
Just get that on there. Nicely done. There we go. Incredible. That's Everest.
That's Everest.
Well done, Phil. Right, victory lap now.
Warmer than I thought it would have been, Tom.
More trees. Yeah, more trees.
More trees than I expected.
And it's not the highest mountain in the world either, because look at that one over there.
That one's higher, yeah.
And I think that the majority of people who deal with having a disability, particularly a hidden disability, like something relating to neurodiversity, specific learning difficulty and mental health, knows how that feels and what it's like to put loads and loads of effort into something that's perceived as straightforward by the general population and looks quite easy to anyone who doesn't know the details of what you're actually going through to make that seemingly simple thing happen. I'm at a point where I recognise when I need support with something or when I need to do things a bit differently. But I've not always been there, and the strategies that I've developed for myself are very personal and they're just mine. What I want to achieve with Breaking Cycles is to share the mindset behind exploring those things, particularly using outdoors activities, because as well as there being a lot of very specific work that can be done around behaviour change with cycling, it's also just an amazing thing to be part of because it's good fun and it's great to be outside. This film isn't just about those couple of days of riding my bike up and down the hill. It's about a collection of subtle changes that I've made over a long period of time. And the message I'd like to leave you with is please recognise that effort in yourself and in other people around you, because that's what we need to be celebrating. I felt the need to do something big, to give myself an excuse to shout about the work that I've done for myself and how I can use that mindset to help others to find their strategies. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to climb Everest to reach the summit, and that's what Breaking Cycles is all about. It's about you doing it your way. I've done it mine.
Okay, enjoy. Lap 23, Phil.
23, yeah.
Get on it, enjoy. Back on the road.
Yep.
23, Mark 2. Just a little puncture. See you later.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah? Come on, Grandad, wet your shoes.
So, we're off now. 105.
We're not off for 105, my feet are hurting.
Come on, Phil. Look at all these people.
I stopped to just give my feet a minute. Just
Shimano on 105. I think fishing tips are better than top chin.
well, it's good, it's not good.
One more then. You brought us through.
Stop it, he says.
So there's 5 nuts.
Get the barbecue going. Oh no,
Well, you know,
yeah, there's 5 of us here.
until it started raining.
We were going to
we weren't
barbecue.
gonna do a